Camilla. Welcome to the Getting Married Multiculturally podcast. I'm super excited to finally chat with you and have you here today with us.
Thank you so much, Edith. It's so exciting to be here, and I'm so glad to finally meet you in person, well, virtually, but it still
Yes.
counts.
Yes.
We've been in touch before, and I love what you do, so I'm really, really happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, you're welcome. I feel like we have so much in common, moving to new countries and following our husband and being in a multicultural relationship, and you having this career and having this passion and purpose in your life to help uh, women like us. It's such an incredible thing. So I am honored to have you on this podcast and
Oh, thank
have you
you.
share all of your knowledge with us.
Thank you.
So before we get into what you're doing, let's tell us a little bit about who you are, where you live, a little bit about your family, your husband, and what you do.
All right. So my name is Camilla Quintana. I am originally from Vienna, Austria. So very nearby to where you're from.
Yes.
And I'm a certified life and relationship coach. I specialize on women actually that moved abroad for love in their majority, and I'm just really passionate and committed to helping them live their best lives abroad, a really fulfilled life abroad. I come from a somewhat, I would say, multicultural family, so I have grandparents from different cultures, which means that, you know, marrying interculturally has always been a certain pattern in my family. There's a history of that. So and yeah, so I think growing up different cultures and languages and things like that, that was really part of my upbringing and of my identity, and what I really enjoyed also. And so I knew from very early on that I just wanted to, you know, travel and move to different countries, and so I did. So, you know, in school I did a semester abroad, and then for university, that's basically at 18 when I left home, and I moved abroad, and I just went, you know, I moved to different places, went to university in England, and then went to Madrid in Spain. I then repatriated to Vienna for some time, which is also really weird, because when you've been away for a long time and then you go back home, it's like it doesn't feel so legit to struggle, but it really is. I mean, I found out that it really is hard to go back. And, people move on, everything just moves on, and you're like, wait, I moved on, I changed. And it was at that time that I met my husband, who is Spanish. And so when we got married, after we got married, we immediately, you know, started our international journey. So we have, I think, wait, let me count again, because I think we have moved literally like 5 times. Well, yeah, like 4 times. But then within the same city, we moved to different homes. So a lot of moves.
Yes.
And yeah, so basically we've been married for 6 years, and I've been pretty much following his career. And I'm in a lucky position to be able to do that, because I work remotely. I have my own business, and I work from home, which isn't the case for many other women. So in that sense, I'm blessed, but still there is such a big difference between choosing to move abroad, and I always say that, and having to move abroad. Even though, you know, you do freely marry your husband or your wife, and you want to spend your life together with them, but really, who really knows what that means when you fall in love and you get married? Nobody really knows what that means, right? And especially when you put it into a multicultural context, leaving your home, you know, going to, I first, just when we got married, I moved to my husband's hometown. So all of a sudden there I was, and, you know, it was his family and it was his friends who are lovely, thank God. But still, you know, it was all his influence, his culture's way of doing things. And you're kind of like, well, what about me? You know, what about what I want to do? Maybe I want to be able to choose freely, and then you just don't feel that you have the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not easy, and
Mm-hmm.
you know about that.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. Moving back to your home, you think that now you're back in your safe space, but then you just realize how much you missed, and you
Yeah,
have this gap that you can't really catch up on. You're, like you
people
said,
don't
your
wait
friends
for
moved
you.
on.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're still your friends, but then they have all those other friends that you don't know, all those
Yeah.
stories, all those trips they've taken that you weren't a part of. And it's especially at that time, I guess, right? That was like
Mm-hmm.
university and early
Mm-hmm.
professional time. A lot is changing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it
And
wasn't
and
easy.
and you adapted this new, you got this new personality, this new identity for yourself, and then going back you realize that you're not even yourself too.
Yeah,
And people who
exactly.
live there, they're thinking like, who is this person now?
Yeah,
You're completely different.
yeah, true.
It's interesting because I know a few families who decided to move back from America back to Hungary.
Mhm.
And I'm always so fascinated. I'm actually was thinking about contacting them maybe a year from now to see just did you
Wow.
really feel how you expected to? Because
Yeah.
often we feel like it's a failure that we didn't succeed in this new country, so we're just going to go back. But then do you really feel like going back? So that's it's very interesting.
Yeah, you
So
should
you
find that out.
mentioned, yeah, you mentioned that you moved back to Vienna, and then were you planning to just stay there for your life? I guess my question is that did you know that you're going to end up in a multicultural marriage and continue traveling? Or when you moved back, you were thinking, okay, I'm back home. I'm just good here now.
Yeah, I don't know at that time. I went back twice. So I've
Oh.
been literally ever since I was 18, I've been moving around in a 3-year rhythm. And there were
Mm-hmm.
2 occasions where I went back to Vienna for 3 years each.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I was young. I was like 25 or 24, I guess. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I really thought about it all that much. But the
Yeah.
second time, which was, well, I guess 4 years ago, right?
Uh-huh.
I had my first child. I was pregnant with my second one, and I just happened to have this perfect living situation, really close to my parents, and
Yeah.
this beautiful home that I loved it so much. And things were really, really nice and easy. And especially when I feel like for me, especially once I had my children, my sense of adventure kind of
Mm-hmm.
faded and made way for, this desire to settle down and to, create like this stable home for my kids and my
Mm-hmm.
family. And so at that time, I mean, I did marry a foreigner, so I guess I always knew that it was a possibility, but I didn't expect to move again, which we did,
Mm-hmm.
last year. So,
Well,
um,
that's very recent then.
yeah, yeah, we've just been here for, well, just over a year now
Uh-huh.
in Bilbao in the Basque country in the north of Spain.
That's incredible. Yeah, but you're really good at adapting. And if you said it was your childhood too, then it was probably not a too big shock for you of getting to know somebody from another culture, or having even this opportunity open for you that you can maybe move somewhere else, or you will have multicultural children,
True,
Yeah,
true,
I
true.
feel like that was a little bit of advantage for me too, of moving when I was younger, because a lot
Yeah,
of people are asking me, how you're so brave, how did you even do all of this? And I always say, I don't know, I didn't really think about it. It
yeah,
was just in
yeah.
me. Yeah.
And when you're
Yeah.
young, you really don't think about it all that much.
No.
And it is exciting and it is adventurous. I don't know about you, but then when you start, getting married and having kids, did it feel different for you then? Did you kind of,
Definitely.
right,
Yes.
want some more stability and
Yes,
yeah.
more stability. I would say that it's still a little bit more. I feel a little bit more adventurous than my husband is. If it would be me, I would just keep traveling and figuring things out in a new country. I feel like that excites me more than my husband. He's always,
Yeah.
but he grew up in that kind of environment of just being in one place throughout your whole childhood and doing the same things, and he
Yeah.
values that. And I value the changes in life. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like we can go through this conversation for hours because we're so in line with our lifestyle. But I'm always trying to kind of think about our listeners that they are about to get married. They maybe don't have children yet, maybe they do. And so I feel like this is actually a really good thing that we have so many experiences in our life that we can share that with people who are about to step in our shoe. And like you mentioned that we didn't really think about so many things, and so I would like this conversation to be about how can we prepare them for this
Yeah.
lifestyle, and what are things that we didn't think about and would be really helpful for them. But anyway, do you want to share maybe a little bit about your wedding, if you had a multicultural wedding?
Yes. So we did, in a way, have a multicultural wedding. Of course, the
You did.
cultures, I mean, they are pretty different actually, but still, the wedding ceremony, it is not all that different in Austria as
Uh-huh.
it is in Spain, right? So, I mean, we did want to accommodate our guests from both countries and kind of make sure that, you know, we got married in Vienna downtown so that it would be easy to travel there and to also
Mhm.
get to know my city. And
Mhm.
then we had like a multicultural menu. We had, you know, Spanish ham and
Mhm.
some Spanish wine and some other Spanish drinks and cocktails and stuff. And then Austrian desserts, definitely Austrian desserts. and
Good.
um,
What
and
about music?
Oh yeah, definitely. Mixed, you know, music. Well, actually,
Mixed
to be
music.
honest, I mean, there is hardly any Austrian music out there anyway. So it was just
It's true.
international music with a Spanish touch to
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
it. Yeah. And we actually, there were, well, I think three couples got together at our wedding, out of which
Oh.
two got married. And out of those three
Oh.
couples, two were Austrians with Spanish, and
No
one
way.
was a Spanish couple, which is really funny. So, you know, weddings are this occasion
Yes.
where things can happen. And oh yeah, that's what we try to do. We had a seated dinner, and we assigned the seats, and we
Mhm.
really wanted to make sure that we just mixed all the
Mhm.
people up. So, I mean, yes, for some there was a language barrier, and we did make sure that everyone would have someone they knew at the table or maybe even next to them, but
Mhm.
also thinking like, okay, we want some cool multicultural
Mhm.
conversations to happen, and who would probably hit it off well. And so we just mixed all of the tables, and I think that really contributed to the whole atmosphere being, you know, very, we didn't have those two groups of people that didn't mix
Yeah.
well. So
Well,
yeah.
you did good with mixing,
Yeah.
getting all these relationships together.
No, that was so
How
fun.
about language? How was your ceremony? What language did you
Oh yeah, we had
predominantly use?
a Catholic ceremony, and
Mhm.
we found a priest that is bilingual fluently.
Oh, that's great.
Did the whole ceremony in both languages, and
Mhm.
he would actually, I mean, it took a little longer, you know, the mass
Mhm.
was a little longer, but he did
Yeah.
the whole thing in two languages, and
Nice.
the songs were all Austrians, I guess. But yeah, definitely the sermons and
Mhm.
everything was also, you know, in both languages, and the menu
Mhm.
cards, of course. So yeah, there a lot of effort went into that.
Yes. And since the two of you are from the same religion, I guess that made it a little bit easier to,
Yeah,
have the same structure of the ceremony and
yeah.
in two languages. And did you have like one language first and then move to the other one, or you did phrase by phrase?
No, it wasn't phrase by phrase, but it was like the lecture that the priest gives. He just did it first in I don't remember one language, and then in the other, like right afterwards.
Mhm.
And also when we exchanged our vows, I said them to him in Spanish, and he said them to me in German. So we just thought that would be fun, to kind
Oh,
of change roles.
yes.
And yeah,
I
we,
always found that that's such a good idea because you really get emotionally affecting your partner, which is what's the
yeah,
goal is for this vow. So is your husband speaking? What languages is he speaking?
we speak the same languages. So
Really?
we started off when we just met speaking Spanish because he wasn't so fluent in German, and he couldn't have a conversation. Like, he could kind of understand, but he couldn't have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke Spanish, and also I have a Spanish grandmother, so it was just easy for me. And then at one point he was like, okay, now I really want to learn German well,
Mm-hmm.
and make like the best out of my time in Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just started to speak in German together, which was,
Mm-hmm.
it's, I don't know, I think it's unusual. Usually you have this one language that is part of the dynamic, and it's hard
Yeah.
to all of a sudden switch. So it was a little weird at first, but since he really, really wanted it, we just made it work. And so we
Mm-hmm.
spoke German for a long time, I would say, until we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of went back into Spanish, I guess. So
Mm.
now if you ask him, he'll tell you we speak, 50-50, but I would say
Mm-hmm.
it's 70% Spanish and 30% German.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
I'm so jealous. I wish we would have that because when I met my husband, I didn't speak English, and
Wow.
Italian was for me the common language with him, but
Oh.
his Italian wasn't that strong. I say he thinks that it was, but
Yeah. Wow, you learned English so well. It's
oh,
incredible.
thank you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I should thank to him of teaching me English because he was definitely the person who was there the whole time and who taught me English. But yes, I started first with Italian, but he just would always respond in English, or maybe he was trying to teach me. I don't know, but that's I thought about this a lot. If he would ever learn Hungarian, I don't know if we would be able to communicate because we learned for 10 years now to just English. And then when do you speak English? Mostly with your clients?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
my work, and yeah, and some friends and colleagues.
Yeah.
So actually, when I'm by myself, I usually speak English. I literally speak all three languages every day, and
Uh-huh.
because I remember having times where I was exposed to one language primarily. So
Mm-hmm.
I would have a hard time switching over to the other language, even if it was my native tongue. Sometimes I had a hard time, especially when I was living in England, and I just spoke English all the time, and I love
Mm-hmm.
English. I think English is my favorite language.
Mm,
um,
really?
yeah, I don't know. It's so easy to express yourself in English,
Uh-huh.
and so I would have a really hard time
Yeah.
switching. And now I think really the key is to speak them, regularly or
Mm-hmm.
daily, all of those languages. And that's when you can actually, yeah, be really like fluent in all of them and not having
Yeah.
to think, ooh, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about multicultural couples. They're getting married and maybe they're in the beginning of their relationship and they're really open about moving or not moving. What would your advice be about who should be moving if they're trying to decide who's going to go to the other person's country, or maybe they should go to a completely new place like a third country? What would your advice be to those couples?
Well, I would say there is no one answer. It would really, really depend on the couple's situation. So, I mean, different factors maybe to take into consideration. Does one have a very, stable job and income, and the other one doesn't? Maybe that is in favor of the person that is so stable in their career to kind of choose the country where they are working at, right? Do you speak the language? Do both parties speak the language of one country but not of the other? Maybe it will be easier for that other spouse to be in the country where they actually speak the language, because language really it's such a barrier when you don't. And there are some languages that can be learned fairly easy, let me say, even though to really be fluent, that's still a long way. And then there are other countries where learning the language is very difficult. So, be realistic about that as well, because language really is such a gateway to the culture and to making friends and to really being able to find your way around and eventually work as well. So I would take that into consideration also. And then, I mean, if you're open enough to put this on a table and discuss this, maybe analyze a little bit of your family, for instance. How supportive are they? Will they kind of go out of their way to help you, or are they some parents-in-law, they're a bit prejudiced about the spouse from abroad, or they're very much in their business, or these kind of factors that can really, really, really cause problems along the way. And I had numerous clients with in-law problems that then affect the relationship, because obviously the spouse, I mean, there are cases where the spouse is totally on the partner's side, but there are other cases where the spouse is on the parent's side, and there are other cases, many, many, many cases, where the spouse is like between two chairs and is like, I love you and I love my parents and I really don't know what to do. So it's kind of like inviting conflict maybe, or at least if you anticipate that conflict, have a conversation about it and try to find solutions, win-win solutions. So I think my definite advice is to really get to know the other person's culture, whether you're moving to the country or not, it doesn't matter, but just get to know it as well as possible. And actually living in the other country, even if it's just for a month or so, it will allow you to have a better insight and a better understanding of their way of doing things, because cultural differences are very real. It's not just I think in today's globalized world, we sometimes think that there are no differences, but actually there really are, and that's okay. And it's not about this is the right way or the wrong way of doing things. It's just our conditioning that, even if we're very aware of it, and even if we don't identify so much with our culture, but it can still come out. It can come out when you have your own kids, it can come out in a situation of stress. It can, and I think it will come out as you get older. So just be really realistic about it. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking actually the most important advice is have realistic expectations. It's not Hollywood. This is not a Hollywood love story. That's not realistic. That doesn't mean that marriage can't be great, because it really can, but just don't expect this happily ever after ending, because life, comes in circles. There will be ups and downs, and in your relationship as well. So just be realistic about it and have the conversations beforehand. Get to know each other's cultures, each other's families, each other's friends. Get to know your spouse in their context. What are they like all of a sudden? Maybe you met abroad. What are they like now that they're back home with their family and their friends around? Are they changing a little bit? That happens a lot. So just make sure you really know as much as you possibly can before, you say, I do.
Yes. I love this thinking, because when couples are getting married, they're thinking about logistics, and they're thinking about how happy they are in this current stage of their life, and they're having a hard time thinking about what is going to be after, when this whole emotion filled year or month settle down. And like you said, meeting with family and friends, that's so important, which I didn't have. And that's why I'm always making such a strong emphasizing this, or I don't know how do you
Mhm.
say that, about how important this is.
Yeah.
And but as you were talking, I was thinking about, unfortunately, here in America, because of the immigration reasons, sometimes couples just need to get married quickly so they can
Mm.
stay together, they can live together, they don't have to be in a long distance relationship. And that's especially for me, that put this pressure on, we need to get married and then we're just going to figure it out everything else after that. So that was a little bit challenging for me. I don't know, do you have any advices regardless of that part of the
Well,
relationship?
I guess two pieces of advice. One is that yes, there is a pressure on a couple in that situation, but thanks to technology, you can have many conversations and exchanges via Skype or whatever you
Mm-hmm.
choose, right? So do take advantage of that. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
different to also see the person you're talking to. So just in case you don't, which I'm pretty sure you do, have
Mm-hmm.
those video calls as much as possible and have those conversations, that you feel that you need to have to be really well prepared for what's
Mm-hmm.
expecting you, just so that you don't get disappointed. Have them, even if it's not in person and it's virtually, but at least
Mm-hmm.
have them so you kind of know what to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second is that I don't believe that there is one soulmate out there for everyone, right? I think there are many possible options, and really what it comes down to is your attitude and your mindset. So even if you didn't know each other all that well and you've never lived in the same place and you've never lived together, still with the right attitude and mindset towards the other one and towards marriage or right or your relationship, I think
Mm-hmm.
you can really make it work. So
Mm-hmm.
just maybe also talk about what marriage means to both of you and how much you are willing to really invest in it and be committed to making this work. And I think that you definitely can, even if you haven't had so much exchange.
That is true. And even if maybe the other side of the family is not, feels a little bit passive or not so interested, or thinks that we'll just wait it out how serious this relationship is going to be, you have to actually put the effort and the initial call and say, like, I really want to get to know your culture and your country and where you from and who
Yeah,
you are. And then maybe that will spark the interest of them wanting to get to know you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so too. It's
Yeah.
always good to be proactive and to not wait for others to come to
Mhm.
you and to, please you. Unfortunately, in life, it's always better
Yeah.
to take the first step and
Mhm.
you will be rewarded for that, I think.
Mhm. Yes. I know you work with women, so let's focus on them, but I think it would apply for men too. How would
Yeah.
you what kind of questions would you ask from the other family members, or how would you communicate the cultural differences? Not necessarily just for the family members, but also for your partner. Let's
Mhm.
say that, just maybe let's say an example so it's easier to kind of relate to it. If there's a couple who met in a country and they decide to get married and they're going to move to a different country together, what would be the best way for them to communicate about their cultural differences? Because it's interesting that my husband and I, sometimes we would have a conversation and I would tell him, well, this is just how I'm doing things, or that's how I always done it. And sometimes we have an argument if it actually is a cultural difference or that's just a personality
Yeah.
difference.
I mean, the questions to ask, I'm just thinking now that a lot of
Yeah.
times it's actually the questions you don't ask because you don't even think about it. That's the problem, I think.
Right.
The obvious things, like what food do you like? How do you
Yeah.
celebrate this and that? That's an easy conversation.
Yeah.
You will probably talk about that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But what about things like family? Who
Mm-hmm.
is family to you? Is it you and your new family unit that you're creating after marriage? Is it you and your parents and your siblings? Is it you and your extended family? How often do you want to meet with them? How much influence do they have on you? What are your obligations towards them? There are many cultures where the children are expected to, for instance, send money. That can be a real
Mm-hmm.
shock for a spouse that's not used to that, and can take it really personal, like an offense and an attack on them. But really it's what this person feels pressure to do because of the cultural norm. Or
Mm-hmm.
there are mother-in-laws that are really up in your business, and others that if you're waiting for some help, they don't want to get too close, they want to give you your space. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess family is always a good way to start, because as you are creating your family, that's when your old conditioning probably comes out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a good question to ask. And then things like, maybe just having some values, and just having a discussion. What does that mean to you? For instance, punctuality. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
to arrive on time? Is that important? Or can things come in the way? I know that's a big thing for me and my husband, because I was really raised to be very
Yeah.
punctual, and
Mm-hmm.
also very reliable. So if I say
Mm-hmm.
yes, even I get in Austria, we get invitations like months in advance. So you will commit to going, in 2 months I will be going to that party, and yes, I RSVP,
Mm-hmm.
and of course I'm going. And for my husband or in Spain, it's so different. You will kind of maybe on Thursday, people are like, oh, we're having a party on Saturday. You're all invited. You can come. Oh, great. And then maybe on Saturday, you realize that, you can't make it for whatever reason. And then you don't go. It doesn't matter. At least, that's my husband's impression is like, oh, don't worry about it. That's everybody will understand if something came up and we just can't go. Or we can arrive really late, or we can, whatever. It doesn't matter. So
Mm-hmm.
that's such a clash sometimes. And at this point, just sharing with your audience that I created this multicultural couples checklist to go through, how you want to create your own special occasions, your own holiday celebrations, and your home and things like that. And I'd be really happy to share it with all of you guys
Oh,
as
thank
a
you.
free download, and definitely have that, go through that list together with your
Oh,
partner.
that sounds such a great list. I love it. Okay, and then you can just send me the link and I will put it in a show note for everybody to
Great.
get
I'd be
that.
happy
That's
to.
awesome. I love that. And you mentioned the holidays, which is one of the questions I actually wanted to ask
Okay.
you. I know we're pre-recording this a few weeks ahead of time, but I'm planning to launch this right a week before Thanksgiving, which is a holiday here in America. And that made me think about asking you a question about how to adopt each other's holiday traditions as we get into the holiday season now.
Yeah.
And I know that they are not every multicultural couple, but some of them would have some holidays that they just need to adopt because they live in that country, or they would be very curious to do that. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Actually, when we got married, one of the best pieces of advice I think that we received was to make the holidays and the special occasions our own. So kind of to really start new family traditions, because that really
Mhm.
makes you grow together and ties you together. And so in that sense, and that's included also in my checklist, to go through, the holidays that are most important to you in your culture, to kind
Mhm.
of get clear and also explain to the others how it is celebrated. And then to see, where is that okay with the other? Do they want to add
Mhm.
something? Do they want to take something out, like maybe the food, they don't eat it for a cultural reason or religious reasons or whatever? Can you
Yeah.
adapt it to your own personal ways? And I definitely did that with my family. And
Mhm.
we had this idea because what's that TV show called?
What is it about?
Christnika, I think they call it, or
What?
it's like
I
a
don't know about
blend
that
of
show.
Christmas and Hanukkah, and so it's
Oh,
a Jewish Christian family, and they celebrate it. Maybe they don't call it Christnika, maybe they call it Hana, whatever. It's just a blend.
something something about blending those two holidays
Exactly.
together. I love that. I have to check it out. I don't know about that show.
So yeah, we just thought it was such a good idea, and I really invite
Yeah.
you all to think about, if you can't agree on one holiday, you
Mhm.
can combine two and make this new amazing tradition where both of you can feel at home, because that's so
Mhm.
important, and also something that you can pass on to your kids, and that will be your thing, like,
Yes.
oh, the so and so's are celebrating this great new holiday. Let's all go there.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely make new traditions.
Yep, and that's exactly what we did, especially with Christmas, because we do have different traditions, and especially when you have children, that becomes a very important piece of your traditions that you create yourself, because they're gonna ask you questions. Why are we doing it this way and not this
Yeah,
other way, like my friends are doing it? So, yeah, it's very important to kind of
yeah,
establish that. I think it's important for both sides to feel that they're valued the same way, even if they live in a country from one of their countries,
yeah.
to value that the other one's traditions. Yeah.
And also,
And
just real quick, when it comes to valuing, I love that you mentioned that. I think for the spouse, it's an absolute prerequisite, but also for the spouse's family. So if you live in or if your partner, better put, if your partner lives in your country and in your environment, just really go out of your way to take an interest, to ask and
mhm,
inquire, what is this like? What is this tradition like in your country? And even, if you can get your family members, maybe you're all celebrating Christmas, but your spouse is, from somewhere else, they're not used to, go out of your, or even if they do celebrate Christmas, but they'll do it in a different way, you know, have this as a dinner conversation, because it will make the other one feel so much more valued and at home and accepted,
yes.
to at least, if you can't incorporate it, but take an interest and ask, what is this like in your country? Why do you do it
Mhm,
like that? Tell us about it. And yeah, I think that's so important.
mhm,
And I wish,
mhm.
people ask me more.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you wish that they do, because this actually ties up to my next question, that I feel like they don't ask because they already know the answer by having all these stereotypes. And strangers, let's say, like on the street, or maybe like parents at the school, or somebody, coworkers, would ask you where you from, and then you say where you're from, and they just have all of these stereotypes. So they don't ask you because they say,
Yeah,
oh, you are from Austria, then you're probably on time, you like
yeah,
punctuality, the tone of your voice, I would say, because often I hear here in America, there are a lot of Mexican families, and they love to, like you said, kind of like the Spanish culture, that they just gather together with no plans, just um you don't have to RSVP, you just show up, you're loud, lot of food, everybody's your best friend. And then Americans are more reserved, more laid back, more formal. And these cultures are often um have some conflicts, maybe, or I don't know. I enjoy experiencing both sides,
hmm
but how do you tell that to people that come and ask me questions, because doesn't mean that just because I'm from Austria, I am this type of a personality.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tricky one because it also happens to me. I guess, people, as you say, they don't ask so many questions. They'd rather assume. And I'm thinking also maybe they're scared that it might be rude to ask questions, and so they
Mm-hmm.
don't. But it's painful to be put in a box because, as you mentioned before, there are cultural traits in a cultural context, but there's also an individual personality. And us multiculturals, we are not so aligned with one culture anyway. We have things from different cultures. So being put in a box and not being given the benefit of the doubt it's painful, right? And we don't want that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you can actively change the way others
Yeah.
think, other by just leading by example. And my grandfather, who was a diplomat, he always used to tell us, and I always think about that: when you go abroad, you are the business card of your country. So
Mm-hmm.
making an effort to really, carry yourself with grace and knowing both when to adapt or to take a step back in your new host country, because I think what people don't like either is people that all the time they go like, well, in my country we do this, well, in my country we do this. That's not so appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing when you should adapt and maybe observe a little. Okay, is this considered really rude if I do that? Sometimes even direct language can be considered really rude in another country when you find it normal, but you wouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
that. So there are so many subtleties, and but also owning your own heritage and your own culture and showcasing it from the best angle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think when you can be a role model, taking into consideration like this balanced dance between the adaptation and the really owning and showcasing it so proudly, I think that's the best you can do, the best chance you have of changing other people's stereotypes. But I think there's little you
Mm-hmm.
can do, and getting
That.
defensive or even passive aggressive or even aggressive, it
Mm-hmm.
won't create a change in the other person, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned something about what I really love, having like a temporary agreement of moving to
Yeah.
another country, just temporary, which I think would have helped me a lot. And when I heard that from you, it made me also think of, oh yeah, if I would know that we are only going to be here for 3-5 years, I would try to embrace this culture and this location so much more than just knowing that I'm going to be here forever. I would just want to see so much and learn so much about it
Yeah,
because I know it's going to end one day.
exactly. And that's that's like the mindset shift. So I
Mm-hmm.
I I got to know this through a client who's actually doing that with her spouse, and they agreed, and they're actually doing it to be, well, they met in the States. They moved, they will move. They were there for 10 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now they are doing 10 years in Spain, which is where she's from. And after those 10 years, they're going to go back. And they just plan it out like that. And it seems to work. And so
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned to another client who was really struggling just with the pressure that you mentioned of, oh my god, this is my life now, and it can be
Mm-hmm.
so overwhelming and so it can create so much anxiety to kind of see yourself so stuck in an environment that you don't feel comfortable in, and that maybe even feels hostile to you, or you just feel lonely and isolated. So
Mm-hmm.
to when you allow the possibility in that this will be temporary, regardless of whether this is actually possible or not. But just making this temporary agreement to either say, okay, after, let's say, 5 years, I think 5 years is a good time. After 5 years, we're going to move abroad for 1 year, or more if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Either ideally to the other one's home country. interesting,
Mhm.
because all of a sudden the roles will be reversed, and
Yeah.
will really foster the empathy between the spouses. And it's also great to experience the other person's culture, and for the kids to be
Mhm.
you know uh, totally submersed in the other culture. Or if it's not possible, sometimes it's not an option to move to their country. Well, maybe you can go either to a different state, or you can go to a different country. That is possible. So it doesn't matter so much if this is super realistic, if this will actually happen. I mean, you shouldn't do it and no, this is never going to happen, because then nobody will take it seriously.
Yeah.
But it's really not about what will happen in 5 years. It's what will happen during those 5 years, which is like
Yes.
all of a sudden you have an outlook, and you're like, okay, I don't have to love everything here. And the pressure just falls off of your shoulders, right? There
Mhm.
is a way out. I will be gone in 5 years if I hate it so much,
Mhm.
there is a way out. And a lot of times when you have this outlook, your attitude changes completely, because you will, be more open to things. You may take advantage of certain, you know, offers that this country or the city has to
Mhm.
offer much more, because you kind of, now the attitude is, okay, let me make the most of it while I'm here, versus, oh my God, I'm stuck here. What am I going to do?
Mhm.
So it's just like a little mind game, a little mind hack, that if you're really, really struggling, um, try that, And
Mhm.
also, I think if your spouse is already making this huge move to go to your country, you can at least grant them 1 year. And
Mhm.
I lived this myself, and I have several people who have done this, even if it's just for a year. It
Mhm.
really, when you're struggling and you go away for a year, this is like therapy in itself, and it can really
Mhm.
charge your batteries. And even if you come back, and even if you stay there, for a long time in that country that you
Yeah.
didn't like so much, your energy will be, your batteries will be charged, and you will feel so renewed. So the effect of interrupting that time abroad, at that time in your partner's country,
Mhm.
is really much longer than just for that 1 year that you're away. I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
in most cases it will continue to, um, yeah, to just give you strength to overcome
Yeah.
certain things.
I actually have like a personal question
Go
because
ahead.
I love everything you said now, because I actually had this idea and I suggested it to my husband. What if we move back to Hungary for a year?
Yeah,
And um I mean, he didn't immediately rejected it, but I can see why he would be worried about, what do I have to do there? There's not many opportunities. And I told him it would just be a year and then we would just come back. And the benefits for me mostly would be for my kids to learn Hungarian and adopt that culture and
yeah,
remember it, not just when we go to vacation. And I'm being realistic. I know it's not going to feel like we are there for vacation like we do it now every year. But I know that my husband would always say when we come back from Hungary that you are so different there. I really love your attitude when you're in Hungary. So,
mhm,
and I really recharge there and I feel in my
yeah,
element. I feel like I'm home with
yeah.
my
It's
people.
so healthy for you and
Yeah.
for your well-being. Yeah. And you could even, you could even frame it as an investment in your children's education, because
Mhm.
regardless of whether you will, later on in life speak Hungarian at your job or with someone in your family, it doesn't matter always. If you're exposed to different languages and to different cultures, that's great for the brain of the children. And
Mhm.
that's proven. There are so many studies of that it will just help
Yeah.
your kids, problem solving skills and whatnot, and also adapting to a different environment. It will make them so much more resourceful and rich in experiences. So I
Mhm.
think it would be a great move if you can do it. And 1 year is really something that, most careers, they can be put on hold for 1 year and then they can continue. And
Mhm.
many employers even value some time abroad, and what
Mm-hmm.
are things that a spouse could do in a different country. They could teach their native language. I mean, English is always demanded, right? But even if
Mm-hmm.
it's a different language, they could take a course. Most countries offer courses in English anyway. You don't have to be in an English-speaking country to
Yeah.
be able to do that. You could take a sabbatical and just travel the country, or
Mm-hmm.
start your own business. There are different things that you can do, and I think it's something that, even if you're very concerned for your career, your professional career, it will survive when you're abroad. I'm pretty certain. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I will have
exciting.
my husband listen this episode and convince him.
I'm to
I love
blame.
that. I love it. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to ask you about is that you said to make this move about yourself, which can also be the same for my husband if he's thinking about how can I make this 1 year about myself and what values, what knowledge I can soak in, and same for people who move maybe for a longer period or for indefinite time. Um, how should we make this about ourselves instead of just following our partner around?
Yeah. So when your attitude towards your move is, oh, I just did that for my spouse, this will immediately put you into victim mode, right? So that
Mm,
really will make you feel very dependent on your spouse. It might make you feel, anxious and depressed, even because it's also for your spouse. It's a responsibility that they can't bear, kind of
yeah,
being responsible for your happipiness or unhappiness in that sense.
yeah.
So when we're in victim mode, we are totally uncreative. That's actually what
Mm,
happens whenever we go into stress and anxiety and depression. We are, our brain is actually very focused on the one thing that it needs to solve. That's what we're
mhm,
biologically wired to do,
mhm,
in light of a threat that we perceive, which is that new country, in that sense, in that case, right?
mhm,
So getting out of victim mentality is super important. There are different options, you're just not seeing them right now. And as I said, it doesn't have to be forever. Nowadays I think nothing really has to be forever. And the second thing is, yes, find ways to make this about yourself. Either make a list of things that are positive about you moving away. So maybe you're more free to do certain things. Maybe in your own cultural context you weren't able to start your own business or dress a certain way or pursue certain
mhm,
certain things. Maybe moving abroad allows you to do that and to be that. Or maybe you're learning new skills, like a new language, and you can take courses. There are certain countries have certain specialties, and you might want to master a certain skill that you can only learn there, so take advantage of
mhm,
that. And if you can't find anything that you're thankful for to be in that country for, and that you feel like, okay, this is really beneficial to me personally, individually, and not just in the context of my marriage, then if you can find anything that's really excited, because then you
mhm.
can create it. You have to create something. You have to figure out,
Ah,
what could I do to
yeah.
make my stay here worthwhile. You're not
Mhm,
going to waste years and years of your life. You cannot do that. And if you feel like you are, then please reach out to someone that can help you see things differently, and that can help you
mhm,
break out of this. In the end, it is a narrow view of the situation. There are always
mhm,
solutions. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to stay forever, and just be happy anywhere. We sometimes hear that,
mhm,
like, of course you can be happy. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to stay in one country, but at least before you consider leaving, make sure you've made the best out of it. Make sure you really tried everything, And if you need help with that, then reach out to someone that can help you, but don't give up. You got to make it worthwhile because you just have one life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely
Yeah.
try and make this about yourself.
Yeah. And when you know that you are going to leave this country, you're all of a sudden going to become sentimental and feel like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
miss this, I'm going to miss that. Then all of a sudden you realize that there are a lot of things that you love and that you are got attached to.
Yeah, exactly. As a little
So I,
baby, you can even imagine yourself,
yeah,
I only have a month left here. And
yeah,
then just see what comes up for you. What would
yeah.
you miss? What do you appreciate?
Yes. So I know you have a really good method of how to overcome these challenges that comes after moving to a new country. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I call it the four pillar approach, and basically in my own experience and also in my work with my clients, I noticed at some point that the problems they experienced and that kind of made it hard for them to be well and to be happy abroad were always one of four, which are my four pillars. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe that when you work and improve all of them, your life abroad will be really solid. And so those four pillars are one, radical self-love and awareness. That's really the basis of everything. If you don't have this connection to yourself, this good relationship to yourself, then it will really affect every other area in your life. So it is the foundation, actually. I mean, I call it a pillar, but now I'm thinking I should probably call it the foundation of everything else. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and also as you get to know yourself better and you start to understand, why do I always tend to feel overwhelmed? Why do I always get
Mm-hmm.
so defensive? Is
Mm-hmm.
that a coincidence? No, it's not. That's why you
Mm-hmm.
got to do the inner work and get to know yourself so well, and your underlying limiting beliefs and your own insecurities and fears that are just in your subconscious and operating there all the time and really shaping your experience of the outside world and even of yourself. So as you do this inner work and you get to know yourself that well, you can react to outside challenges in a much better way. Which
Mm-hmm.
leads me to the second pillar, which is resilience and resourcefulness. So there is this nice metaphor that I like to use here, which is when you're sailing, kind of like adjusting the sail.
Mm-hmm.
No matter which way the wind blows, you kind of know how to adjust the sails, and still reach your destination. So
Mm-hmm.
that when things happen, life happens, sometimes you'll fall, but you can get back up again. And also resourcefulness is what I mentioned before, seeing new possibilities, being flexible.
Yeah.
I have, funny enough, I've had several clients that were lawyers. So a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
when they move abroad, is very hard to still work as a lawyer, as we all know. And so when you kind of like open your horizon to other possibilities and other ways, in which you can incorporate your background but still do something else, you can create a whole new, really meaningful life and career for yourself, even, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just seeing new opportunities. And then the third pillar is relationship and family life. I'm super passionate about that because many problems actually, come from a relationship problem. And when you are abroad, and you and me, we both know that when you move abroad for your spouse, you depend on them a little more. You are in a weaker position.
Mm-hmm.
You made this big sacrifice. You probably expect a lot in return, even if it's kind of like subconscious. And so the dynamic changes completely, right? And so relationship issues are very common. And there's also great potential. So, and then the fourth pillar is meaning and purpose, to really find something that will give you a sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of excitement and joy and accomplishment. I think accomplishment is really the ingredient in this pillar that people tend to forget, and so they are busy but they don't have this sense of accomplishment, and that's if that's lacking, you're not actually going to feel fulfilled. So you need to find something, and it doesn't have to be work, and I go through that in detail, and this will look completely different for everyone, what can provide them with a sense of meaning and purpose. But just for your own reflections as you're listening to this, make sure that the accomplishment factor is included in the nice and joyful activities that you do.
I wish I would have had this when I moved here. It would have helped me a lot and saved me a lot of headaches and worries. And I
Yeah.
love all of these pillars. They're so important. And really, if you thinking about yourself first, that was the biggest eye-opening for me, is not looking out to others, the culture, the partner, the family, but really, why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
Why is this feeling coming? And I'm trying to implement this more and more.
Yeah.
It is hard, but I think it's such a crucial way to have a happy marriage.
It
Yes.
is. And what I've started doing recently, and it really helps me even, is to think of myself and of my life as my own movie. So I'm the heroine of my movie, and I need to, but I'm also writing the script in a way, right? So I need to always think about, what should this heroine of the movie, how should she react in the best possible way, or what can she do to really get to that happy Hollywood ending? And and when you see yourself as kind of like the script writer, and you really want the heroine to do well, or the hero of the movie to do well, and you don't necessarily think about it in terms of, this is me, this is me, but like in a movie. So creating that distance, it usually helps you to be a little more creative and think of new possibilities. So kind of imagine, what if this were a movie? What could this movie hero, this character, what could they do to make the best out of it, so that people would want to watch and would be like, oh my God, this person is really doing so well, and
Yes.
So you can try that out too.
That's a great idea. Okay, Camille, I feel like I can talk to you for hours. We have so much in common.
Yes.
I'm sure that a lot of couples would feel the same way, and, maybe implement these pillars that you mentioned. So if they want to learn more about this method, if they want to have more chat with you or get to know you better, or if they want to work with you, or if they would like to get to know your story a little bit better, what's the best way to find you and to contact you?
Well, first of all, definitely reach out to me. I'd be super happy to connect and, let me know what came up for you after this interview. If you had any insights, or if you tried anything out and it helped you, hopefully some tools and some mind hacks and something that I've mentioned. So please do reach out to me and let me know. And you can just visit my website, which is www.camillaquintana.com. And there you'll have all my contact information, my email address, my social media handles. So I'm mostly on Instagram, also on Facebook as coach.camillaquintana. And when you visit my website, you can also download a free guide, revolving around the 4 pillars, if you're interested in doing some more work, some more like self-coaching work in this regard. So definitely download the free guide to create your fulfilled life abroad, revolving around those pillars. And yes, so I'd really be happy to be connected.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. And thank you again for all of your time to sit down with me to chat. And I'm looking forward to keep following your work on Instagram.
Me too.
Bye. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.